I have served the Vethani royal household for 31 years, and in that time I have written reports on matters both delicate and grave. The loss of the fourth heir's ceremonial vessel, the conclave dispute of year 47, a cook who served the wrong grain to a minister of the Velthari delegation, thereby nearly ending a trade agreement that had taken 9 years to negotiate. I have never written a report about what happened in Avesthar Hall on the 14th afternoon of the Ember season. I am writing it now because I believe it should exist somewhere, even if only in a private ledger that no one else ever reads. Avesthar Hall is the great library of this palace. It sits in the eastern wing behind a set of double doors inlaid with pale horn and silver thread, and it has not been used in any functional sense for 40 years. I say functional because the doors were never locked. The climate arrays inside were maintained on a seasonal cycle. We sent a technician twice a year to check the humidity monitors, ensure the light panels ran at their proper amber setting, verify that the thousands of manuscript cases lining the walls were not deteriorating. The books were tended. The room was not. The reason, if you serve here long enough, you come to know without being told. Princess Sophie's tutor, a scholar named Calvin, died in Avesthar Hall on the night of the Ember Festival 40 years ago. He had been her teacher since she was 5. He had a weak heart. The festival fireworks startled him. He fell between 2 reading tables, and by the time anyone reached him, it was over. The princess had been walking to meet him for their evening lesson. She was 17 steps from the door when she heard. She has not been inside since. I do not know how many times the royal physician suggested gently that she return. I stopped counting the efforts at 23. Some were subtle, a carefully worded suggestion that a book she wished to consult happened to be shelved inside. Some were direct. One court physician, new to the position and not yet aware of how things worked here, simply told her that 40 years was long enough and the room was only a room. He was reassigned to the orbital monitoring station within the month, not by order. Simply because the princess looked at him in a way that made everyone in the corridor, including me, feel that the conversation was over. The room became a kind of wound in the palace. We worked around it. When foreign dignitaries asked, we said it was undergoing restoration. It had been undergoing restoration for 40 years. Talvren arrived at the beginning of the season as part of a maintenance rotation. He was 67 years old, retired from an orbital engineering firm, and had taken the palace posting because it required very little running, and the lunch stipend was adequate. He was a large man going soft at the edges, with calloused hands and a habit of humming to himself while he worked. His file listed 38 years servicing Climatan light systems across 6 different stations. 4 administrators had recommended him. They all used the same word, reliable. He was not briefed on Avesthar Hall. In fairness, we had posted a note in the maintenance register stating that access required prior approval from the steward's office. What I failed to account for was that the note was filed in the appendix, and that Talvren, having checked the main register and confirmed the hall's climate arrays were due for seasonal inspection, went directly there on his 3rd day without consulting anyone. The doors were not locked. I had not locked them. This is my error, and I will carry it. I became aware of the situation at the 2nd bell of afternoon, when one of the corridor attendants came to my office with an expression she wore only when something had gone wrong in a way that had no category yet. She said, "There is a man eating lunch in the library." I reached the corridor outside Avesthar Hall in considerably less time than a man of my years should have been able to manage. Through the gap in the doors I could see, perhaps 20 meters in, seated at one of the long reading tables near the window wall, beneath a shaft of amber light from the ceiling panels he had apparently already serviced, since they were running clean and warm in a way they had not managed in years, Talvren. He had his jacket off and folded beside him. He had a wrapped meal cloth open on the table. He was eating a sandwich, and he was humming. The melody was nothing I recognized. Something old, I thought. A human working song of some kind, low and repetitive, the sort of thing a man hums when he is content and not thinking about it. I was deciding whether to go in and quietly retrieve him when I heard a sound from further down the corridor. Princess Sophie stood 6 meters from the door to Avasthar Hall. She was 57 years old. She had the pale silver coloring of the Vethani line, and she wore a dark house robe with no formal markings, the kind she wore when she was moving through the palace without expectation of being seen. She had not, as far as I knew, been in this wing of the eastern corridor in some years. She was absolutely still. She was listening to the humming. I did not breathe. I did not move. I was aware of the corridor attendant beside me making a very small sound, and I put my hand out in a gesture that I hope communicated clearly that she was to do nothing, say nothing, and remain where she was. The humming continued. Tal Vren was not aware of any of us. He was examining something on the table, a light calibration tool, I think, one of the small-handled readers, and turned it over in his fingers as he ate, the way a man does when he is thinking about the next job and not about anything else. Princess Sophie took one step forward, then another. She stopped again at the threshold. The pale horn doors were open about 1/2 meter. She was looking through them at the amber light and the reading tables and the man sitting there, entirely at ease, eating his lunch. Tal Vren looked up. He had the expression of a man who has been interrupted during a task he was enjoying, mild and inquiring. He looked at her the way he might look at anyone who appeared in a doorway, no recognition of rank, no particular alarm. He was new. He had not been trained in how to recognize the princess at sight. She was, to him, a tall, pale woman who had appeared in a doorway. He said, "Afternoon, I'm just about done with the lamps, won't be in your way much longer." He paused. "Though the table space is good, if you wanted to sit." He gestured at the table in the uncomplicated way of a man offering a seat to someone at a shared lunch counter. The princess said nothing for a moment, then she stepped inside. She sat down across from him, not close, at the far end of the long table, with 2 meters of old burnished wood between them. She put her hands on the table and looked at the shelves of manuscript cases along the wall. Tal Vren looked at her, looked at his sandwich and held out half of it. "Grain paste with something pickled," he said. "Not for everyone, but if you're hungry." She looked at the sandwich. She took it. They sat for some time. I cannot tell you precisely how long. I was not looking at my chronometer. I was looking at the princess seated at a reading table in Avasthar Hall, eating half of a palace maintenance engineer's lunch, and I found I was not capable of looking at anything else. At one point Tal said something about the calibration tool in his hand, about the way amber panels in old halls tend to read warm on the dial but run cold at the edges, and how you had to measure from the center of the room and trust the middle reading. He had learned that the hard way on a station where a council chamber was always 3 degrees cooler than it said it was, and for 2 years nobody could work out why the councilors kept arguing. He said this in a very dry way, as though he had been waiting a long time to tell someone who wasn't another technician. The princess laughed. It was quiet and brief, and she seemed slightly surprised by it herself, but it was there. Tal Vren nodded, satisfied, and finished his sandwich. He packed away his cloth, pulled on his jacket, and checked his calibration notes against the panel readings. He told her the arrays were in good order and would hold until the cold season. He said, "Good afternoon," in the same tone he would say it to anyone, and he took his tools and his jacket and walked out the corridor door to the next job on his register. He filed his maintenance report that evening. Climate arrays, serviced and within tolerance. Light panels recalibrated to specification. Notable events, none. I read it twice. Then I went to my own desk, and I locked the register appendix note, and I assigned Tal Vren to the Eastern Wing indefinitely. He has not asked why. I think he would not consider it his business to ask. He is a reliable man, and the lamps in Avasthar Hall have never run cleaner, and on some afternoons when I pass the corridor I can hear, very faintly, the sound of someone humming. Sometimes there are two voices,